On the coldest Christmas Eve the city had seen in years, the lights of the tallest penthouse tower sparkled like diamonds in the sky, yet inside its glass walls sat a man who felt emptier than the winter wind itself. Alexander Hale, the youngest self-made CEO in the city, a man who owned skyscrapers, tech empires, luxury cars, and everything money could buy, stared silently at a dinner made for one, a silent reminder of every Christmas he had spent alone. Everyone saw him as powerful, untouchable, and blessed beyond imagination, but no one ever saw the truth behind his eyes. No one saw how success had built walls around him taller than any building he owned. And as he looked out over the glowing city he practically ruled, he whispered into the quiet, "Why does it feel like I have nothing at all? If you believe in kindness, humanity, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more stories that touch the heart." The snow outside swept in spirals as though dancing freely, mocking the stillness in Alexander's penthouse. He had grown up with nothing, clawed his way to the top with relentless ambition, and in the process had pushed everyone away, friends, family, even himself. Christmas had once been magical, filled with his mother's laughter and the warmth of a tiny home, but all of that vanished when she passed away. Since then, Christmas only burned like an old wound reopening each year. He had tried hosting parties once, inviting business partners and acquaintances, but they had come only to impress him, earn favors, or showcase their wealth. None came with sincerity, so he stopped trying. Wealth bought him respect but never love. It bought him admiration but never connection. And now Christmas Eve felt like punishment for all the years he dedicated to building an empire instead of a life. He decided to step outside for air, unable to breathe in the hollow echo of his penthouse. Downstairs, the city felt alive. Children laughing, couples holding hands, families carrying boxes of cake and warm meals. The contrast made his chest tighten. He walked with no destination, his expensive coat catching snowflakes like tiny crystals. A group of children ran past him, chasing each other with bright scarves and glowing smiles. For a moment, he envied them with a kind of ache he didn't understand anymore. He had forgotten what it felt like to be carefree or to belong to someone, even if just for a moment. He kept walking until he reached a small community park. It was old, worn down, the benches chipped, and the playground rusty, but it was full of joy. Neighbors had decorated it with handmade ornaments, paper stars, and strings of mismatched lights. A tiny Christmas festival was happening, nothing like the high-end galas he was used to. This one felt real, raw, messy, warm. He watched from a distance until he saw a little girl sitting alone on a bench, her shoes wet from the snow, her hands tucked into sleeves too thin for the winter. Something about her felt familiar, like he had once sat just like that, hoping someone would notice his loneliness. When a gust of wind made her shiver, Alexander walked closer out of instinct he didn't recognize. She looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes and smiled, not the kind of smile people gave him because of his money, but the kind a child gives simply because she sees another human being. He noticed she was holding a small paper plate with a single gingerbread cookie on it, broken in half. It looked like something she had cherished but kept only because she had no more to give. Without saying a word, she extended one half toward him. Alexander froze. No business partner, no executive, no luxury brand had ever offered him something so small yet so heavy with meaning. He took it carefully, as if accepting something fragile. The girl brightened instantly, and she patted the empty spot on the bench. He sat, feeling strangely out of place but somehow also exactly where he needed to be. The girl chatted softly about Christmas decorating in the park, about how her mom was working late and couldn't be with her yet, and how she wished everyone had someone to spend Christmas with. Alexander listened, each word piercing deeper than she could ever know. She noticed the sadness behind his gaze, the same way a child senses emotions not yet clouded by the world's complexities. And then, without hesitation, she made the offer that would unravel the lonely walls Alexander had built for years. She told him he looked like he needed company, and that he could come have Christmas at her place. It wasn't a mansion, she warned. It was tiny, messy, loud sometimes, and the kitchen always smelled like burnt cookies, but it had warmth. And she said that tonight, no one should be alone. For the first time in years, Alexander felt his throat tighten with tears he refused to shed. A stranger, a child, inviting him, the CEO who could buy entire neighborhoods, to her humble home because she saw he was lonely. Something inside him cracked open. He followed her through narrow streets, past old buildings covered in murals, toward a tiny apartment block glowing faintly with a handmade wreath. When the door opened, her mother appeared, tired eyes, worn hands, an apron dusted with flour, but her expression softened instantly when her daughter explained why Shed brought a stranger home. Alexander expected suspicion, fear, hesitation, but instead the woman welcomed him kindly, as if he were just another human needing a warm place to exist. The apartment was small, cramped even, but filled with the scent of cinnamon and the sound of soft laughter from neighbors dropping by with homemade dishes. There were mismatched chairs, scratched tables, decorations clearly made by hand, and a tiny tree with ornaments shaped like stars, hearts, and little drawings. As he stepped fully inside, he felt the warmth hit him, not just from the heater, but from something invisible, something he had been missing for so long he had forgotten what it felt like. The little girl tugged him toward the table where a simple meal awaited. It wasn't the gourmet feast his private chef made every year, but somehow this felt richer, more meaningful. They ate together while neighbors shared stories, sang soft carols, and exchanged small gifts. For the first time in years, Alexander laughed, not the polite corporate laugh he used for meetings, but a genuine laugh that came from somewhere deep and buried. The mother noticed how he seemed astonished at even the smallest kindness, how every gesture touched him as though no one had offered him sincerity in years. When she asked gently if he was spending Christmas alone, he hesitated, then nodded. She didn't judge him, didn't treat him differently, didn't ask what he owned or who he was. She simply said that no one deserved to be alone on a night made for togetherness. Her words made something inside him tremble. He realized he had been starving not for food, not for wealth, but for connection. Hours passed like minutes. He helped decorate cookies, listened to the little girl share stories about her school and her dreams, and watched neighbors exchange gifts that had little monetary value but immense emotional worth. He noticed the mother kept checking her nearly empty wallet when guests were gone, as though calculating the cost of tomorrow's meals. He saw the peeling paint, the broken heater knob, the patched clothes, and yet they had shared everything they had with him, a stranger, a millionaire, a lonely soul. For once, he didn't feel like Alexander Hale, CEO and billionaire. He felt human again. When it was late and the gathering ended, the mother wrapped a scarf around her daughter and thanked Alexander for being kind to her little girl. But he shook his head internally because she had it backward. They had been kind to him. They had given him something priceless, belonging. As he stepped outside with them, the little girl slipped a tiny handmade star into his hand. She told him she made it from old candy wrappers because she believed stars should be shared, not kept. It was the smallest gift he had ever received, and yet it became the most precious object he had ever held. As he walked back to his penthouse, the city looked different. The buildings he owned now seemed empty shells. The real treasure had been found in a tiny home filled with warmth. He placed the handmade star on his massive Christmas tree, alone in the vast silence, and realized the loneliness hit him even harder now. Not because he was empty, but because he now understood what he had been missing. The next morning, he made a decision that would change everything. He returned to the small apartment, but this time not as a stranger. He brought a warm coat for the little girl, groceries, presents, and a quiet promise he didn't know he had been carrying. He offered to help fix their apartment, support the mother's small baking business, and make sure they never struggled alone again. But more importantly, he returned because he wanted to be part of something real, a family, a connection, a place where he wasn't the CEO, he was just Alexander, someone who mattered not because of money, but because of kindness. From that Christmas onward, he never spent a holiday alone. The little girl became like family to him. The mother became someone he admired deeply, and their home became the one place where his heart finally felt at rest. He learned that wealth meant nothing without people to share it with. He learned that sometimes angels come in unexpected forms, even in the shape of a small girl with a broken cookie and a heart full of generosity. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. It truly helps support stories that bring warmth and hope into the world. Special request, comment below. Do you believe one act of kindness can change someone's life? and with that, the lonely. CEO finally learned that Christmas wasn't about gifts, wealth, or shining towers. It was, and always would be, about love, connection, and the courage to open your heart again.